Hey guys, I am full swing into this year and finding myself working like a maniac to generate some early momentum and success in the new year, which reminds me of all of my favorite high achiever qualities and also tends to be a good time for a reminder about how to work smarter, not harder, as the key to sustainability and actually avoiding that burnout. So tune in for productivity hacks that keep this engine running at full speed ahead. High achievers, man, you gotta love them. You know what I'm talking about. And chances are that if you're listening, you are probably one of them. You know, the people who set big goals and somehow, some way, still juggle a million things in the air without dropping any of the balls. Yeah, high achievers kind of rock. I see you. As a proud, self proclaimed high achiever, I can tell you that my goals are big and they are currently intimidating the crap out of me right now, which normally triggers some sense of like overwhelm, and I often forget to have grace for myself. And I am constantly on this hunt for how to do more with less. And maybe that's even some of my like corporate roots coming through on that one too. So, however, whatever. A motto I've long lived by is just this idea of working smarter, not harder. Because just because we are busy does not mean that we are actually being productive, and ain't nobody got time for that. So first things first, and this isn't necessarily a productivity hack, but it is something that I talk about all the time, and it's been so important for me to go back to having clear goals set and to really just know where I've got my GPS headed for the year. So this is a directional and just a focus hack that you want to have those big goals actually set so that you know what you're working towards. If you haven't yet set those goals or defined that dream, like I highly suggest that you listen to. I've got a couple different episodes on this topic. So, for instance, one I know I released back in October, and that was called something like Finish Strong: How to Set Meaningful Goals for the Final Year Stretch. Or I know another episode released in January of 2025, just about the power of who over what. And that's a new approach to resolutions, equally important. And I can link both of those in the show notes. But if you need a guide, definitely check back at those so that you can set some goals. And then once you have those goals set, we high achievers, we are all about action, right? But remember, we want productivity over busyness. So I just want to share 5 hacks that keep me prioritizing the right things during the day so that I remain feeling fulfilled and productive by the end of my day. And these are just my things. Again, I'm sure you could Google or chat GPT 100 different other things, but this is what works for me. And I keep these things tried and true when I'm looking at my work week. So, first thing, hack number one, it's a classic. It's rooted in the 19th century tried and true Pareto principle, which is also known as the 80-20 principle. So basically, and follow me here because the flip flops. So basically, that 80% of your results will come from 20% of your efforts. So it's imperative that you spend at least 80% of your time on the 20% that is actually going to move the needle. So, as a business owner right now, for instance, an example, my priorities are being pulled in a lot of different directions. So, I have my designated different days on my calendar where I spend 80%, or the goal is that I will spend 80% of that day putting that day's efforts towards moving that one needle of my business forward. So, for instance, like Mondays are my podcast days, Tuesdays are my client coaching and new consult days. Now, sometimes it does waver, but again, hey, at the end of the day, 80% of my time was it spent on that thing. The other beautiful thing about this principle is that it allows me to complete batch activity, which you hear a lot about in the creator community just as a success practice. Like I'm batching my podcast, I'm batching my content. And then I just know, like I had mentioned, that when I get to the end of the day, if my efforts were in the right vein, that right needle moving spot or not, it's pretty obvious. So, what are the key things that would get you closer to that goal that you have? And are you spending 80% of your time on the 20% big needle mover for yourself? Okay. Hack number two, creating a schedule with time blocks. I remember with my corporate teams, especially, we always had lots of conversations around wanting to respond to emails quickly, right away, while at the same time just recognizing that constant email checking and replying actually kills your overall productivity. Time block when you're going to check your emails, the same way that you want to time block when you're going to be on calls or when you're going to be unavailable for work because you've maybe participating at a personal event. I don't know. Schedule your day. And while you're at it, because these episodes are as much a reminder for me as they are you, my friend, that includes scheduling time for movement. I'm not quite sure what it is here, but I see so many like high achievers who are so focus on getting the work done that we tend to put movement breaks aside. So just again, want the reminder for myself too, so that I often fall into that trap right now of more, it's like, okay, one more email or just one more call in placement of my scheduled movement break. And it's just overall, that's just is a one marshmallow decision versus a two marshmallow decision. So the thing that has helped me though with this one is having a movement buddy. So maybe that's just like a neighbor who's going to go on a walk with me during that time, or even to just a self accountability tracker for just do 1 mile a day. Even walking, that's a 20-minute walk, 25-minute walk, 1 mile a day. Another time block to schedule into that day, something I've always done is simply leaving the last like 15 or 30 minutes of your day just to reset. Even if that includes having to transfer a to-do list or to wrap up any last minute items, or even just to plan out the next day. Creating a schedule with time blocks has always been, will always be a way that I stay focused and positioned to get a ridiculous amount of fulfilling action accomplished. However, your day looks, you should have your time planned and blocked out so that you are managing your day versus your day dictating where it's going to suck your energy and your efforts. All right. Hack number three, write stuff down and have systems in place that make your life easier, please. Okay, I know this is a big one. And when I say something like, hey, have systems in your life that make things easier, I mean, gosh, we could talk about everything from automated schedulers in your business to just having, oh, for Pete's sake, a designated spot for the family's daily shoe selection. So although I will tell you, I think that that's something I probably talk about often, is just offering up little things that I do to make my life easier. That's something that's pretty frequent throughout the episodes of this podcast. But what I'll say from a productivity hack is that I live and breathe by my calendars. I don't think that would be a shock to you. So, and I did say calendars, like with an S. Yes, we have a family calendar. We have my husband's firefighter shift schedule calendar. We have my work calendar. Everything this family does goes into a calendar, down to what others may even think is like the silliest thing. So, for instance, like if I said I was going to bring a sweet treat in for someone, I write it on the calendar. If I want to send someone flowers for their birthday, I write it on the calendar. If I want to check this, if I want to check in on someone's like ill family member, it just a couple days later, like I write it on the calendar. If the husband needs us to drop off his truck for an oil change, I pick like so I can pick him up. I write it on the calendar. I think you're getting where I'm going here. And none of this is because like I'm a forgetful person. That's not what it is at all. It's just a tool and a system that I use to write stuff down and create the system for myself to remain high functioning and productive. And what something else that I love about this too is like I I'm never putting an unrealistic expectation on my brain that I'm going to remember all the little things that my high achiever self wants to show up for. And the amount of freedom and relief I have knowing that all of those things reside in one place for me and will show up with a reminder, whoop, whoop, right when I need them to be brought forth back into prioritization. Oh, heck yes. It just creates more space and energy and brain power for me to bust out all the other things that I need to do. Hack number 4, setting boundaries and meaning it, which means saying yes to things that you're excited about and that align well, and saying no when things do not align or it's just not something you really want to do. I have got to say, like, I'm not perfect when it comes to boundaries, but I have gotten pretty good at setting and keeping boundaries. And there are a lot of little communication and mindset things that go with that. And I don't think that's actually something that we've talked about yet on the podcast. So I'm going to make a note to do that. We will go ahead and I'll make sure that I release a boundaries episode because I think that there's probably some good stuff there. But what I will say when it comes to boundaries is the thing that I think was probably one of the biggest game changers for me is when I decided to view boundaries as swim lanes in the pool of life. So here's what I mean. Swim lanes. They are not rigid and they are actually built to sway and bend when needed, but they always keep the line straight and keep order instead of chaos in the pool of life. So when strong boundaries are set, like everything is flowing in the same direction and it just feels good. Say yes when you want to say yes and when it aligns to the goal, and say no unapologetically and without guilt when something doesn't feel right or simply isn't aligned to the greater goal. The first few boundaries that you set, like they are going to be the hardest. Just like when you're first building that swim lane, there's no general direct, right? It's just the first buoy, but keep going and before you know it, the swim lane all of a sudden starts to take shape and your whole life ecosystem, it starts to work with you instead of what sometimes feels like against you. And my friend, when you have the big goals that you have, you need an ecosystem working with you. It makes things a heck of a lot easier. Okay. And then rounding out this productivity hack is hack number 5, which is taking the time for self reflection. And I know this may sound like for some of you, you're like, oh, geez, here's the fluff work. Or like, this is the last thing that you actually have time for is to sit and check in with your hyper speed self. And it's a ginormous but, okay? Taking even 5 minutes at the beginning of every day to just check in and ask yourself that $1,000,000 question I've mentioned before, which is, where am I at? And again, this isn't talking about your physical state. You know what I'm talking about here, but more your emotional state and mental capacity and level of peace and fulfillment. Just where am I at today? Often, like I'll even if I feel like I'm in an extra rush, I'll write down just a few adjectives, and that practice itself just makes me feel more connected to my deeper purpose and my intuition, and just like that deeper inner why to like why I have the goals I do and why I'm working as hard as I am. It's just this beautiful moment that I gift myself, even if the adjectives aren't always positive ones, and that's okay too. It's a beautiful moment to just be present, just be. And I think all of us high achievers want more of that level of just being present in our lives. So be intentional with it. And ask yourself at least once a day, where am I at? Just be. Okie dokie, my friend. Let's bring this back home with the unjuggled summary. So, productivity hacks for high achievers who are doing million things, and we've got all the things, all the goals on our plates. Number one, the 80/20 rule. Structure your day to spend 80% of your day on the 20% of all of your efforts that are going to move your goals forward. Number two, create a schedule with time blocks so that you have control over your day instead of your day dictating its busyness onto you. Number three, write stuff down. Have systems in place so that you don't have to overload your brain and that you can actually show up for the things that matter to you most. Number four, set those boundaries and mean it. Yes means yes, and no means no. And number five, take a moment to check in with yourself every single day by simply just asking yourself, where am I at? And just being in tune to you for that brief moment as a grounding and a resetting daily practice. All right, my friend, let's go off and continue being our high achiever selves, kicking butt and accomplishing all the things we take on. Thanks for listening today. I'd love to see your review for the show. So please do take 30 seconds just to leave one so I know how this message landed with you. It really does mean a lot and it really does help get this podcast out to others. And hey, if you haven't gotten your hands on the in-demand top 10 time freedom tips download, make sure that you grab that from the show notes too. It's free and it includes 10 things that you can literally do today so that you never utter those famous words of, oh, there just isn't enough time in a day ever again. Seriously, if you said those words this week, go download that free guide now. All right. Until next time. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. It means the world to me that you're here to ride in the struggle bus with me and that you're willing to consider different perspectives, tools, and techniques that just might provide a little bit of relief and get you one step closer to the abundance that is available and waiting for us all. I hope you take a moment to grant yourself some grace where you've been denying it, some love where you didn't realize maybe it was right in front of you, and some faith where you thought all was lost. If this episode had an impact on you, would you please share a comment with a review? I'd love to hear what landed for you, and it helps us get the word out to our fellow struggle bus riders. So please review what was impactful for you. Just know these episodes are a pure labor of love in a space where I'm growing alongside you. I'm evolving every day, and I look forward to all the ways and the things and the perspectives and opinions and choices that will change over the course of time in my own life, day to day. Until next time, just know that you are loved, you are divinely cared for, and in the struggle, the journey of this life really is beautiful. I'm glad that we're in it together. Cheers.